I wanted to refresh your mind on how to clean a brush. So, the first thing you should do when you're ready to clean is kind of wipe it off with paper towel. That way, we don't have a lot of pigment, which is paint, going into our sink system, which is no good. So, there's these little silicoil jars, so they have a coil inside of them. You probably saw them the other day, but you're going to dip your brush in there and kind of swirl it around, and you can actually see the pigment coming off of the brush. So it's changing the watercolor. And here we go. You can see it from this point of view. I'm just swirling around, trying to knock as much of the pigment off as I can. And I'm not pressing super hard because the last thing I want to do is bend those hairs. Those hairs are precious. So I want those to be in good condition for the next time I paint. We will be using liquid soap to try and get as much pigment off of the brush as possible. So that's what it looks like. There should be some other soaps available today. So just a demonstration on how these silicone scrubby things work. You do have to insert 2 fingers in. I would recommend that you use the hand you don't normally draw or write with to put that on. And you can see I'm putting a little bit of the dish soap on there. That's all you need. You shouldn't use any more than that. And then you can take a wet brush. So the brush is wet, not cleaned, but just a little bit of water on that brush. And you want to pull down. So you never want to push up. You want to pull the brush hair, kind of like the brush towards you as you're doing it. And you can see I do like a zigzag, a whole bunch of Z shapes. That's to try and knock as much of the pigment off of the brush as possible. Ideally, you don't have any pigment at the end of the day. So if I were to put the paintbrush on my skin, there shouldn't be any bit of red or yellow or any color. Here's what it looks like for this angle. From this angle, you can see the faucet should be turned down really low, so just a trickle of water. Because if we all use the faucet, that's a lot of people using it at one time, and the basins won't be able to drain in time. And then we'll have a big bathtub in our sink, and that's not good either. Make sure that you never put your palette in the sink, so that circular palette never goes in there. And make sure that you don't drop any bits of acrylic in the sink. Yeah, you'll have a little bit of residue from the brush, but you get that, like, it's just the bare minimum. It's basically like a wash when you're talking about watercolor. It's like that. So I spent a decent amount of time washing each brush individually. It is a disaster if you decide not to wash well or not at all. It will affect your entire outcome of this class if you wash those brushes correctly, which is spend the time to make sure all the pigment is washed out. So again, here's what it looks like when you shape your brush hairs. You're just pinching it back into the original form, and I do think that's important. I like coming back to a brush that's in the same condition as I found it. Real quick, as a reminder, you should rubber band from the back of the handles so you don't accidentally like snag on the brush hairs, because that'll bend them back. Brush hairs are, like I said, super delicate, so any kind of flex could make them not function as well. The expectation is that after you use your sink to wash your brushes, you take a quick moment to wipe down the sink. I would use the green Brillo pads to scrub out the sink and rinse it out. If the person before you has done their job, there shouldn't be a lot for you to do, but I would just do a quick pass with that scrubby. Check to see if there are any chunks of paint, because you really want to avoid those going down the drain. Here's what you can do if there are some chunks that aren't coming off. You can use that scraper tool to gently try and get them up. It will work. You just have to use a little bit of pressure on there. Lastly, if you see weird crispy chunks of acrylic, you want to take a paper towel and wipe those out. This is kind of what they look like. They're gross and they're skunky, and we don't want those falling into our drain.